Okay. I'm David Stutzman, and this is my second self-directed inquiry on Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. Um, for this visual, oral, unscripted presentation, I'm going to be comparing the character traits and themes of Okonkwo to uh, other characters from other pieces of media. Um, to preface, again, this is unscripted, and I will also not be quoting every single piece of media that I cover here, since it's either redundant given the context or the general idea of the events of what's happening in the story um, fits well with what I'm trying to say rather than a particular quote. With every piece of media or character that I bring up, we're going to examine that through the lens of what character trait, what theme, or what aspects of Okonkwo that the village sees. How do they relate, and that'll all be categorized on this whiteboard. This whiteboard is here to make me look professional, and the stack of books and DVDs is made to make me look smart. So, yeah, there it is. So the first uh, character slash piece of media I would like to bring up is Warhammer 40,000. And Warhammer 40,000 is a multimedia franchise with a lot of lore that is publicly available all on YouTube, on Warhammer websites. There's a lot of context and lore and story surrounding the property, but what's important for the sake of this presentation is a lot more narrow, which I will condense here. So in Warhammer 40,000, well, first I should clarify what 40,000 is. 40,000 is actually the year that the story, or well, it's not necessarily a story, but set of stories, this property, this setting, I should say, takes place. It takes place in the 41st millennium, the year 40,000, and this is a world where there's aliens and demons and human beings, but all that's important right now are human beings. In this future, the humanity, they worship a god called the God Emperor of Mankind. However, he wasn't always known as the God Emperor, and this is the character I would like to examine first. So the God Emperor started out way, way early in real life's in the real world's development. He was kind of shot on this planet via meteor or whatever, but he's lived on this planet since the dawn of humanity itself, and he's been observing us, and he believes it's his purpose to guide humanity along the best possible path and lead us into a brighter future where we command the stars and the galaxy. And this character, he later reveals himself to humanity far in the future, not quite the year 40,000, but way past where we are. And he brings us to the conclusion that any form of religion is kind of what plagues us, any form of major belief. And so what the God Emperor tries to do in the story is eradicate all religion. And he does so successfully. Over time, there is no religion. We further in technology. There is no AI. We just continue and conquer the stars, essentially. Now, the God Emperor, people love him. People love the God Emperor. In this future, he's not worshipped yet, and he's not even called the God Emperor. He's just called the Emperor. And he's the ruler of mankind at this point, but he's no god. He's not worshipped yet. But eventually, to help continue his plans, he creates these kind of genetically modified sons, right? And these sons will later be known as Primarchs. That's not entirely important, but the son that matters is one named Lorgar. And Lorgar wants people to worship the emperor. He believes that the emperor at this point has earned God status and should be worshipped as such. And essentially, Lorgar, his whole goal, his whole thing in the story is that he wants to find the true gods of the universe, and he believes that's his father, the emperor. However, the emperor refuses this. Obviously, his whole plan was to abolish any form of religion, any form of worship, whatever. So obviously this goes against that, and Lorgar is so distraught by this that he was so firm in his goal. I didn't stress that enough, but he made an entire planet into a temple to worship the emperor, and the emperor demanded that planet be destroyed, and basically illegalized his worship. And Lorgar was super distraught by this. So eventually, Lorgar, still searching for gods and pissed off at his dad, found the ruinous powers, or the chaos gods. And these are like interdimensional demons. It's not too important, but he falls under their words. He begins to worship them, and he starts a coup to destroy the emperor, to destroy humanity as they know it, convert everyone to chaos, and have the whole world ruled by the four chaos gods. I'm not going to go too into depth on what they are, what they represent. That doesn't matter, but all that matters is that Lorgar is now on the side of abject evil in the universe. And so this whole thing eventually comes to be known as the Horus Heresy against the Emperor of Mankind. But what happens is, at the end of the heresy, the Emperor is critically wounded, and he is left on something called the Golden Throne, which keeps him alive. And as time progresses, we get to the year 40,000, and unfortunately, against his wishes, the entirety of humanity is a zealous population that ravenously worships the Emperor and loathes chaos and tries to eradicate it from the universe. And the Emperor, who does not like this, is powerless to stop it because he's stuck on a chair as a corpse. He is a living corpse, and he is kept alive by 1,000 blood sacrifices of human beings every day. Now, as to why the story of Lorgar and the Emperor relate to Okonkwo, of all people, I know that sounded very strange. I will explain it in a minute. I'm going to compare both the Emperor and Lorgar to Okonkwo, but the themes that tie the God Emperor and Okonkwo together are the themes of heroism, leadership, control. He's determined. He feels like he's superior than everything. And so, to demonstrate this, I believe the major theme that ties the God Emperor and him together is leadership. Okonkwo, like the Emperor, they seemed destined. It's all to rule their culture, however you want to say it. Okonkwo, in the book, is heavily implied to be just rising in power. He's high society already. He's part of the Egungun society. He's always in town meetings. He's a significant player in Umuofia, and the God Emperor is as well. But this comes to a turn when culture turns. When people people like Lorgar start to worship the Emperor. When the Christians start to worship a different god in Umuofia, and both Okonkwo and the God Emperor are powerless to stop that. As much as Okonkwo wants to banish the Christians out of Niger, he can't. He doesn't have that type of power, even though he thinks he does. He doesn't have that much control over his culture anymore. He doesn't even have that much control over his own family, as demonstrated by Nuoye. And so does the Emperor. He can't control what Lorgar wants to believe, and so he falls to chaos, and now half of humanity belongs to chaos. And Okonkwo is powerless to stop it, because he's just one man now after his banishment. He's not as powerful, not as relevant as he was before, and the Emperor, after his critical injury, and he's left after the Golden Throne, is just forced to watch this happen to his culture, and so is Okonkwo. So, I want to... So the theme here is leadership. Oh, I don't know if you can read that. And another kind of theme around that is displacement. He's displaced within his culture, and so is the God Emperor. Since both of them obviously don't want what's happening to their culture and they're powerless to stop it, they're both displaced in that sense. But displacement will become a more major theme as we examine more characters, but for now, this is what I would like to place. It's hard to write, so please ignore my bad handwriting. The next character I would like to examine is Lorgar. I want to take a closer look at Lorgar. What Lorgar represents in Warhammer is humanity's innate desire to want something to worship, to want to be ruled by something. His whole goal in life was to search for the true gods of the universe, and he found that within his father. And when his father rejected him, he found something else, the ruinous powers, chaos. He, with such fervor and strict belief, he wants something to rule over him. He wants to serve something. And so does Okonkwo. He wants to serve his ancestors, his culture. He wants to perpetuate that system. He wants to worship, it's but he's left disappointed after his culture changes. His culture changes, but for Lorgar, it's his father. They're both disappointed in some way that causes them to shift. For Lorgar, after his father rejects his worship, he falls to the ruinous powers, essentially being dead to his father. And so does Okonkwo, strangely. He falls to his own ruinous powers. He kills himself. And at the end of the book, that's revealed to be an abomination against the Earth Goddess. And in that sense, he fell to a chaotic state of being. He disobeyed his gods, just like Lorgar. And in that sense, both Lorgar's turn to chaos and Okonkwo's suicide mirror each other. And the theme that connects to, for me at least, is the theme of disappointment. Right. Right. So, yeah, both of these characters, Lorgar and the God Emperor, both represent a part of Okonkwo's personality. The God Emperor represents his tragic loss of control over his society, and Lorgar represents his immense disappointment in what he expected to do with his life, with himself. And it's very interesting that both of these characters in tandem with each other relate to Okonkwo, and things fall apart. To further along the themes of disappointment, The next piece of media I'm going to bring up is Frankenstein. Um, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So let's look. The specific character I'm going to look at, though, is the protagonist, Victor Frankenstein. Um, in the book, this is one that I'm not going to directly quote because the general idea and just kind of what the public zeitgeist has interpreted from the story is what fits more here rather than a specific quote. What I mean is, Victor, in his hubris, in his stupor of intelligence, creates life. He believes he can, so he does. He never really questions why, but he just so adamantly believes that he should, because it is progression for the sake of progress. Without questioning the belief systems he based his actions upon, he created an entity with irremovable significance to his life that failed up to live up to his standards, i.e. Frankenstein's monster. With Okonkwo's case, he did the same. He never questioned his ancestors. He never questioned his gods. He followed the instructions that his culture has laid out for him so strictly in order to create Nwoye, to raise Nwoye in that same culture and be the man he wanted him to be, much like how Frankenstein, never questioning his desire to create, to progress, and creating a son who ought to have been his Adam, but instead was his Lucifer. And through this, both of them created disappointments with, as I said, irremovable significance to their lives. Okonkwo, his son, Nwoye, disappointed him immensely by being a Christian, by being soft, being a woman in his eyes. And Victor was immensely disappointed by his creation, his son, because he was ugly. The creation of life wasn't as beautiful as the mathematical equations on his board seemed to be. It was so tantalizing to follow that, and without questioning, he created his biggest regret. And Okonkwo, with his teachings of wealth and power rewarded by the gods for worshiping them so strictly, created a Christian man, a Christian woman, as he considers, who is no longer his son, and the biggest disappointment in his life. And while that obviously fits into the theme of disappointment, it also fits into the theme of blind faith in their own belief system, obviously, in which Victor Frankenstein believed in science and progression and followed his own hubris. Okonkwo followed his teachings, not even his teachings, technically, the culture's standards, and followed them too closely without relenting, without leaving room for humanity in Nwoye, that he had to find it through Christianity. And so, to add to this, we're going to put blind faith. There it is. All right. The next piece of media I would like to talk about is most likely the most obscure. It is an A24 film called Darren Aronofsky's Pi, and not like a dude named Darren Aronofsky has a pie and that's the movie. It's Darren Aronofsky is the director and Pi is the name of the film. I would just call it Pi, but everyone thinks I mean Life of Pi, which it is not. It's not the Tiger movie, but it's a schizophrenic math movie, and I'm not even kidding. To summarize the plot of this movie is as Herculean of a task as it is explaining why I'm in a ponytail, but essentially, it is about an unrelenting mathematician who, despite the detriment to his health that it causes, the detriment to the people surrounding him, tries to find the God number. What I mean by the God number is the one ratio to rule them all, essentially. The digit that can predict when a single leaf falls, when a single man dies, how the economy will shift, how the stock market will change by the next day, or how a bird's feather can fall to the ground. He is looking for the one number that proves that nothing is random. And his train of thought is as follows. This is the quote I have. I do not have the timestamp in the movie for when he says this, because I don't have access to the movie at the moment, but I did find the quote. And the main character, Max, in his own words, says, "Mathematics is the language of nature. Everything around us can be represented and understood through numbers. If you graph these numbers, patterns emerge. Therefore, there are patterns everywhere in nature." Right? That is his belief system that he follows very, very closely throughout the entire movie without relenting, even though it is incredibly deprecating. Obviously, that should sound somewhat familiar. This is building off of these themes, and will have its own in a second that I probably should have brought up earlier, but whatever. Towards the end of the movie, however, looking for this number has its toll. This is a horror movie and very symbolic. It's an A24 film, of course it is. And so, as he's looking for this number, his head starts to ache. He had a really large vein grows on the side of his head right here. And in a maddening stupor of intelligence and math, I guess, he buzzes his hair off, and he's entirely bald, so he can see the vein that's growing because he's trying to look for this number. What I think this represents is the physical toll it's taking on his body to do this. It's a warning. This is not healthy. This is not good for you. Why are you still searching for this number? And the reason this relates so much to Okonkwo is that Okonkwo has, much like Max, has a strict belief system that he follows no matter how much it displaces him from the rest of his family and even the rest of society. Even though a lot of the times he's considered the pinnacle of his society doesn't follow the rules of their gods and their culture as firmly as he does, of course. Where these two characters diverge, however, is towards the end of Pi. Towards the end, Max has an aneurysm stemming from the vein that came from the big god math number, and he takes a drill and lobotomizes himself. And the next time we see him, he's sitting on a bench in a park. Now, I forgot to mention this, but throughout the movie, he lives in an apartment, right? And there's this little girl with a calculator who knows he's a mathematician and likes to ask him random math questions. She'll ask him, what's 64 times 483? And he'll say it on the spot. She'll check on her calculator and be like, yeah, you're right. This time, though, after he lobotomized himself, he's just sitting on a bench, looking up at the leaves on a tree that he once sought to find the ratio of how they fall on. He's wearing a beanie, so you probably can't see the big lobotomite scar on him, but eventually the little girl with the calculator sits next to him on that bench and asks him a math question. And this is the first time in the movie where we see him relaxed. He is always either frustrated or focused. Throughout the entire movie, those are his only two moods. Or he's scared, but regardless. For the first time ever, since the beginning of the movie as well, he says, I don't know. She asks him a question, and he playfully says, oh, I don't know. And she puts it in her calculator, and says, oh, it's 84. And he's like, oh, I see. And then she keeps asking him questions, and he keeps saying, I'm not sure. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. And what I believe this is meant to represent is he's finally content with who he is. This whole movie, he's never made time for himself, and he's always put his entire self-worth on finding this number. And by the end of it, he gave up, and he wanted to be comfortable. He wanted to be himself. He wanted to live his life without being burdened by this purpose that he placed himself upon. It was really tunnel vision. He looked solely at this number and trying to find it without leaving room for anything else. And through lobotomizing himself, he doesn't have to worry about that anymore. It's metaphorical for letting go. And Okonkwo didn't do that. No matter how many times he was given a sign that maybe he was too strict, maybe he was too angry, maybe he was too quick to violence, maybe he was following his teachings too closely, he ignored all of them and he killed himself. But what Max is in Pi is what Okonkwo should have been. Maybe not what he should have been, but what he should have done. He should have thought about what he thought his purpose was, to be better than his father, to be the leader of Umuofia, to make his son a real man, to follow his culture, and he should have relented just a bit. Maybe not have given up, but learn to let go and be himself and relax. And so the connective theme between these two characters and what is so representative about Okonkwo and his character is his determination, his unrelenting goal. So right here, we're going to put unrelenting. I hope that's legible. I'm sorry. Let's do that and that. What I think this also is, other than his unrelenting nature, is tragedy. He could have just re-examined his life and saw the error of his ways, but he didn't. Much like the Emperor, he built up this amazing life for himself as a future ruler, as a member of high society. It left, and it's his own fault. That's what tragedy is. Your greatest strength becomes your downfall in fiction. And so for that, as another aspect of his character, of the theme surrounding him, I'm going to put tragedy. We'll put it like up here because we're running out of space. We need space for other things. There we go. Yeah. So the next character I would like to bring up is a character called Fuse Kazuki from a Japanese animated movie called Jinro the Wolf Brigade. In this movie, Fuse Kazuki is a soldier in an alternate reality of Japan. In this alternate reality, Japan was on the Allied powers during World War II, meaning that America didn't bomb them and have the occupation, the era of occupation, I mean. Germany did, and Germany made Japan in its image instead of America, raising Japan in America's image. And so Japan turned a lot more fascist than how it is currently. And so there's a lot of uprisings, obviously. However, eventually it is revealed that Fuse Kazuki is part of a rebellion. He is subtly helping all these uprisings rebel against the dictators of Japan, and he's part of something called the Wolf Brigade. Oh my god, sorry. And at the end of the movie, his romantic interest, we'll call her, who was a spy for the government on Fuse because they had long suspected that he was part of the Wolf Brigade / wanted to use him as like a scapegoat to end the specific branch of cop that he was, the soldier. They were called the COPA. And what's important here is that at the end of the movie, to ensure that the Wolf Brigade can continue and do what they do, he needed to kill his romantic interest. And the reason why is kind of nebulous. There's a lot of hints at explanations, but it doesn't. No one gives a very distinct reason. I have a quote for this. An hour and 33 minutes into the movie, the leader of the Wolf Brigade tells Fuse, "What's important is that they believe we have her. Whether she's alive or not doesn't matter. There's only one way to make sure that the other side doesn't get her back and can't be sure she's dead. Listen, the only way she stays alive for our purposes is if she dies here. She was there at the shoot out back. She was there at the shoot out back there. She knows that. You can leave the pack if you want." Referring to the pack, he's referring to the Wolf Brigade. And so it's kind of implied that the military is going to be after them because they have her. They need to know that they might have her, but they don't want to run the risk of her actually giving information to the military, I think. What's important here, though, is that Fuse does kill her. Even though he loves her and he regrets it, he kills her. Which is especially interesting considering that at the end of the quote I just read, the leader of the Wolf Brigade gives Fuse an easy out. You don't have to be part of the Wolf Brigade anymore. You don't have to kill her. She still has to die. We're going to kill her. But you can get out of the pack if you want. This is obviously very similar to Okonkwo and Ikemefuna. The reason Fuse killed his love interest was because he believes in the cause of the Wolf Brigade. He believes that they are good for Japan and that they need to continue. And this necessity to continue, or the belief that they are a necessity to continue, is what leads him to kill his love interest, no matter how much he loves her. It's ordered to him by his leader. And this same thing we see in Things Fall Apart. Okonkwo is told that Ikemefuna has to die. And Ezeuru tells him, you shouldn't have a hand in his death. You shouldn't have to kill him. But he still does. And he still does this because he believes that's what a man should do. As pretty much everything we've encapsulated here, it is his refusal to relent on his beliefs even just a little that causes most of his issues, that causes most of his problems. And we see the same thing with Fuse. He believes that the Wolf Brigade is necessary, so he kills his love interest. And Okonkwo kills the only son he really thought would be a good man. And it is this theme of, sorry, I have it written down, the upholder of culture, beliefs, and virtues, right? That is what Okonkwo is. And while Fuse isn't necessarily that, it's his duty to uphold the Wolf Brigade to ensure that they survive. And Okonkwo, by being the upholder of culture, ensures that his village and his society as he knows it survives. So the theme that, or I'm sorry, not the theme, but the aspect of Okonkwo's character, or at least how his village sees him, is the upholder of culture. So here, we're going to put upholding. holder, sorry. This same sentiment of sacrifice also plays into the theme of tragedy that is present within a story. But the next piece of media that I would like to address is a manga called Gyo by Junji Ito. In Junji Ito's Gyo, this is a very weird premise, so I apologize, but there is a gas/germ that was made in World War II by the Japanese that infected the water and created its own metallic organism that latches itself onto living things and controls them and moves them like spiders almost. So, in the book, as it takes place in Japan, it's mostly sea life. It starts out in the ocean, and sharks and fish come out with metallic spider legs and infect the place until eventually these machines caused by the germ attach themselves onto people. And this gas infects people, not zombifying them, but making them into these bloated, horrific creatures that can't really move unless they have the machine, making it so the machine can get to them and control them and spread the germ even more. It's an animal, it's an organism. However, it's also heavily implied that the germ is in part the spirits of the Japanese people who actually made the germ for the purpose of chemical warfare during World War II. And in a way, these sea creatures coming back to destroy Japan is the literal manifestation of Japan's past mistakes, of their ancestors' past mistakes. It is the sins of the fathers. It is the ghosts of the past, literally, coming to haunt them. And in a way, Things Fall Apart tackles the same thing. Obviously, we have the Ububu, which are the literal manifestations of the ancestors, but more specifically, the whole book, Okonkwo is trying to perpetuate a system that, even though has its own rich culture and isn't inherently bad, has very good teachings, still has a lot of harmful beliefs to it. And because of people like Okonkwo, those harmful beliefs aren't changed or cut out to evolve to be the best culture it can be, but just remain stagnant. Think of Christianity in real life, right? There have been a lot of changes to the Bible, sure, but there's also been a lot of different interpretations over the years, right? When people saw fit that slavery was the optimal route for humanity to go, passages of the Bible were changed to fit that, and now we see that as evil, and we reinterpret those passages to mean something else. In that same way, oppositely, Okonkwo refuses to change, even as the times change, even as people's minds change, to ever actually relent on any single word that his culture teaches. And because of that, he's perpetuating a culture that eats and swallows twins, eats and swallows women who don't want to marry, that eats and swallows Christians, just like the fish from Gyo. And he's perpetuating a system that hurts, much like how the fish in Gyo represent. That's what they represent. They represent the culture still present, eating away at people. And so because of that connection, I want to put Sins of the Fathers and Ghosts of the Past onto this chart. Ooh. sins of the father / of the past. We'll just keep it at that. To elaborate on these themes, I would like to present a character named Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender. He is just like Okonkwo with his father, atoning for his father's sins. So Okonkwo believes his father is lazy, and with Zuko, his father is the Fire Lord in Airbender canon. And the Fire Lord became a totalitarian dictator and tried to take over the entire world, and eventually this was stopped. But Zuko's entire character arc through the show was trying to appease his father after he was banished, and via killing the Avatar, or capturing the Avatar, I'm sorry. And eventually he realizes that shouldn't be his purpose, that it doesn't mean anything. He doesn't need his father's approval, and instead he tries to correct his father's mistakes by helping the Avatar and defeating the Fire Lord and becoming the new Fire Lord and helping them progress as a peaceful nation. And this is, in a way, a lot like Okonkwo. Okonkwo is afraid of failure. He is afraid that he's going to be like his father. He's afraid that his kids are going to be like his father, and he tries what he thinks is the good thing to escape that. And in the same way, Zuko, trying to win his father's approval, wanted to capture the Avatar, but the main thing that always got in his way was his own fear of failing to do so, and failing his father's expectations of him as a man and as the prince of the Fire Nation. And eventually, when he switched to the side of the Avatar, it was his fear of becoming like his father that propelled him to do so. And for that, the connective theme, not only of sins of the father here, but is of the fear of failure. We'll just put FOF. There we go. Moving forward, the next character I would like to bring up is Colonel Muska from the film Castle in the Sky. And in Castle in the Sky, Colonel Muska is the central antagonist, and his goal is to conquer the Kingdom of Laputa, which is a giant castle in the sky with a big laser beam on it, and use it as a weapon against the world to essentially he just wants to conquer Earth using Laputa, and he believes he has the right to do so because he's a descendant of the Laputan people, and so naturally he is the Laputan king, in his own words. And he believes he's destined for more because of this. And that drives his superiority into himself. He is a huge narcissist. He obviously, as people who want to conquer the world do. And him and Okonkwo share a lot of similarities. Okonkwo may not be of any royal blood or whatever, but he believes that to some degree he should rule Umuofia, or believes that he could rule Umuofia. And although there's not many similarities other than that, they both share the drive to rule, the drive to conquer, the drive to do what they think is what is natural for them. Muska doesn't think it's better for anyone for him to rule. He just thinks he should do that because it is in his nature. And Okonkwo, same within his nature, as a man's nature, as he believes, or as he at least excuses it as, he believes he should be ruler, the ruler of Umuofia, to some degree. And so this fits into the theme of leadership, and in both of their minds, heroism, but it also feeds into how they are high society, both within their own culture and within the culture they seek to rule, right? Colonel Muska is a colonel, he's a high-ranking member of the government, and the king of Lapida, as he proclaims, and Okonkwo is a very wealthy man, 3 wives, many children, many yams, and they both believe that they should rule. And so, because of that, we're going to put natural leader. And, high society. There it is. These are aspects of both their character that they share. And I'm sorry if I'm coming off as like I'm making this up as I go. I promise I'm not. That's just how I am. But there is another aspect that I forgot to mention that they both share is they both seek control. Okonkwo believes that he would be the abject best ruler for Umuofia because he is more like a man. Muska believes that he should control the planet because he's a narcissist, because he's special, because he's a colonel, because he's the king of Lapida. And because of that, we're going to put control, or the need for control. Or I guess we could put controlling on there. We'll put it on the side here. Is that visible? Yeah. There. Oh, yeah, I see. Okay. Furthermore, in the movie, Muska says this: a superior being such as myself has only one option: burn them. He's referring to his enemies, and that's the same thing with Okonkwo. He believes that him and Umuofia, and him as a leader of Umuofia, or at least a representative of it, should burn those who oppose them, like he believes with the Christians, like he believes with warring factions and warring clans. But to elaborate on this, and I think a better example of how Okonkwo relates to this and a political need is the character Kent Mansley from the animated film The Iron Giant. As I said, Okonkwo is the upholder of his culture, of his religion, of his beliefs. Obviously, he fears, or maybe not fears, but dreads or dislikes it when third parties come into play and disrupt that, or potentially disrupt that. That's what he thought of the Christians. That's what he thought of Ekemefuna at first. It's in his nature to be suspicious of these cultures, and the same goes for Kent Mansley. The Iron Giant movie takes place in the 50s during the Cold War, where xenophobia against communism and just traits of other non-democratic countries was rampant, and Mansley represents this well. He's an ultra-nationalist. He's an isolationist, arguably, and what best describes this about him is this quote from the movie. I don't have a timestamp for it. I apologize. When Mansley he's trying to investigate a rumored giant robot, an iron giant, if you will, in the woods near his town, and to do this, he takes a little boy to dinner. Nothing creepy about that. To try and get some information on it, because he suspects that this boy, Hogarth, knows about the Iron Giant. And here he's essentially trying to lecture Hogarth on why he's doing what he's doing. And I'll read the quote. Firstly, sorry, I forgot to mention, he starts off the conversation by referencing Sputnik and asking him what Sputnik is. being a Russian satellite. And Hogarth replies with, it's the first satellite in space. And this is what Manley says. He says it's a foreign satellite, and all that implies. Even now it orbits overhead, watching us. We can't see it, but it's there. Much like that giant thing in the woods, we don't know what it is or what it can do. I don't feel safe. And then he asks Hogarth if he feels safe. And Hogarth is confused, and he asks him, what is he talking about? Talking about? Oh my god, I'm sorry. And Mansi replies with, I'm talking about your security. While you're snoozing in your little jammies, as he puts it, he says, back in Washington, we're wide awake and worried. Why? Because everyone wants what we have, Hogarth. Everyone. You think this metal man is fun, but who built it? The Russians, the Chinese, Martians, Canadians, I don't care. All I know is that we didn't build it, and that's reason enough to assume the worst and blow it to kingdom come. This is xenophobia, just to a T. It's different. It's not made from us. It's made by them. We should destroy it. We should kill it immediately. And that's exactly what Okonkwo thought when the Christian missionaries first arrived in Mbanta. So the link between these characters is his sense of, is his xenophobia, his pride within himself and his country. Yeah. So we'll put that here. No, it's a little curved, but that's fine. Phobia. And we'll just put nat for nationalism. It's a little cramped right there, but that's fine. Yeah. All right, and as it happens, that is the last example I have. So this has been my self-directed inquiry number 2 on Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. And I hope through doing this, it allows for us to see Okonkwo through the lens of different characters, different aspects of characters, separating the bits and pieces of his own character, allowing us to understand him better. You know, Okonkwo is a very multifaceted character. He has a lot of aspects, as you can see, and by dividing up these aspects and putting them through a more digestible character, hopefully that allows me or you to understand Okonkwo better. And I hope you had a good time watching. All right.